What is your best they can't send us all to detention story? In 11th grade, my gym teacher had the high school change uniform rules so that none of the girls past 10th grade could wear shorts at all during PE, no matter the length. It wouldn't have been so frustrating if the teacher herself hadn't worn booty shorts and was never told to cover up because she was leading the married principal around by his dick. So all of us in my grade that had gym wore pants the next day but refused to do anything except sit on the floor the entire period. The principal was called and threatened us all with ice, but we kept sitting and ignored him. We repeated it for 2 more days before they let us wear shorts again. Another teacher had called the school board and the school board was like, just let them wear shorts. It's PE class. It's lame, but it's all I got. When I was in junior high school, probably about 1968 to 1970, female students were not allowed to wear jeans or pants of any type. Skirts and dresses only. And this was public school. If you did try to wear pants, you would be sent home to change clothes. One day a large group of us decided to all wear pants and see what happened. About 60 girls all wore slacks, not even jeans but nice slacks, to class, and they made us all sit in the hallways until they figured out what to do. We had to sit in the school auditorium all day, but the whole thing started a dialogue with the school district, and the next year, we could wear pants to class. A year after that, we could wear jeans. When I was in high school, a student walked up to the front of the class and pulled the clock off the wall and wound it forward to 1 minute past when the bell typically would ring. The entire class watched him doing this and actively began distracting the teacher so she wouldn't notice. He goes back to his seat calmly and raises his hand. "Excuse me, Miss Spanish teacher?" "Yes. Can we go now? I think I heard the bell. Oh my goodness, everyone go." The entire class sprinted out the door and started booking it down the hallways and into the parking lot. The assistant principal took over the class for the rest of the week. 3 minutes after the buzzer signaling the start of class, my biology teacher would lock the classroom door so that people who arrived late couldn't sneak in. If you arrived after the 3 minutes, you would have to wait in the corridor until he decided you had suffered enough shame. One day we all turn up to class on time and the door is unlocked, so we go in and sit down. There is no sign of the teacher, so we wait. After 5 minutes he still has not turned up, so someone decides to turn the tables. We all decide this would be hilarious, so one of the boys locks the door and we just sit around and chat. The teacher turns up a couple of minutes later and tries to get in, but cannot, and starts knocking on the door telling the boys to unlock it. They refuse, and he goes to the security office to get another key. The boys then unlock the door and the teacher returns. We were expecting him to get really pissed off, but fortunately he saw the funny side of it, laughed it off, and he never locked the classroom door again. Principal of my HS slipped on a ketchup packet in the lunchroom and broke his leg during senior year. For the graduation walk, everyone handed him a packet of ketchup as we shook hands. Harmless enough, but he was visibly not amused. There was also a sizable pile of ketchup at his feet after the stage walk. In junior high, I was in a gifted class with a teacher the majority of us were not crazy about. When she left the room, we moved the teacher's desk about 2 inches to the left. We then moved all of the student desks about 2 inches in the opposite direction. She returned to the room and sat at her desk with her chin in her hand, looking confused, for the remaining 20 minutes of class. This is really not that impressive, I now realize, but this was about as daring as I got in 8th grade. Our temp teacher left the room to get something, and while she was out, someone locked the door. Eventually the teacher gets back and finds she doesn't have the key, and no one inside the room will unlock the door for her, so she has to call the head of department to unlock it for her. Then the temp and the head of department make all kinds of threats about what will happen if none comes forward, but no one does. And that's how we found out that they actually can put an entire class in detention. At my high school we had trailers way at the far end of campus that some classes were in. I had a math class in one of these trailers with a very strict, and maybe a little insane, teacher. As soon as the tardy bell rang, he locked the classroom door and wouldn't let anyone into his room without a tardy pass from the office. Anyway, one day this huge fight broke out on campus, which blocked one of the main exits that led to the trailers. Tardy bell rang before anyone in our class got to the trailer. We all waited until he opened his door, announced no one would be let in without a tardy pass, and sent the entire class to the office. When an entire class of kids walked into the office to explain what happened, they just rolled their eyes, and the vice principal walked us back to class and told our teacher that he had to let us in. In high school we had a big tradition of wearing costumes the Friday of Halloween. My senior year they banned costumes and said any students found will get a detention. I said fuck it, and I went as my GTA V character. A cowboy with a thick Russian accent. BTW, I'm Russian and I live in rural US. A friend went as Marty McFly. Long story short, everyone went with normal clothes as costumes. List of outfits: axe murderer, fighter pilot, greaser, doo-wop girl with the greaser, motorcycle rider, gangster, some character from American Horror Story, Jason Brody with tattoo, and more. Nobody got a detention. One asshole teacher tried, but we argued this is what we always wear. True for Marty McFly. Last year my school went on a ski trip to Vermont, and the teachers would put tape on the doors in order to tell if people left their rooms after a certain time after curfew. The people in my room and I wanted to leave for some reason, so when we left we just took the tape from every single door and threw it all away in the lobby. The teachers were pissed but nothing ever happened to us. Last day in one school in 8th grade, before moving to another school 2 hours away. Had tater tots for lunch. A friend said something, so I tossed a ketchup covered tot onto his tray. He said food fight and tossed it back. I threw it at his face. Someone else joined in. Pretty soon 50-some kids were tossing tots. Big ass food fight. It all got blamed on me because I was leaving. When I got to my new school, they had been told, and the second day there I was called into the principal's office, where I was threatened with a suspension if anything like that happened there. March 20th, 2003. I was a foreign exchange student in Germany as a 7th grader. Germany as a whole was extremely against Bush starting a war with Iraq, so in early March, it started to circulate the school that, if the war would in fact start, everyone would walk out in protest. March 20th came, and the 11th and 12th graders sounded the alarm. The entire school streamed out in a gigantic mob. They tried to lock us in, but it turns out that you really can't prevent 500 kids/teenagers from going somewhere, so doors were forcibly held open and people jumped from the first story windows. Everyone took the public transportation to the middle of the city, where our school met up with 3 other school bodies and we marched through the streets. I remember, my class was supposed to have music that day, so we all got our recorders out and blew them as loudly and off-key as possible. As the American foreign exchange student, it was definitely a bit awkward to be ditching school to protest my own country, but I definitely didn't want to make myself a social outcast by being one of the only ones to stay behind, and I was personally also against the war, so I got over that pretty quickly and enjoyed the adventure and a day without classes. The protest was over 2 or 3 hours later, and everyone just went home, even though school was long from over. The next day a few teachers gave us lectures, but that was the extent of it. Who knows, maybe the instigators got bigger punishments, but us little 7th graders were left alone. That was the first time in my life that I ever protested something, and it was honestly extremely empowering. Even as a foreign exchange student protesting my own country XD. We turned the student parking lot into a beach. A bunch of us pooled money together to get a few truckloads of sand cheap, and we dumped it out into the parking lot, put up kiddie pools and volleyball nets, and partied until the cops told us we had to go home. We walked out to protest the vice principal being replaced. It was 99% of the junior and senior class, and they couldn't give us all detention. They did give detention to those who didn't come back from the football field and just left to go get drunk though. Who knew? In my second year of high school, I and another kid got sent to discipline for roughhousing in PE class. I was sent home for the day and assumed the same happened to the other kid. Skipped school the next day for an extracurricular event, and when I came back the following day I was called in for a disciplinary meeting. Apparently they gave the other kid a 3-day suspension, so the following day the rest of the PE class decided to march into the administration offices and protest the unfair punishment of the other guy. So the principal decided I skipped school because I knew about the protest, so I got punished again. Kudos to other plus 50 kids that somehow got away with it. Forced the school to enforce an even stupider policy of punishing someone getting beaten up equally to the kid doing the beating. TL. Doctor skipped school, and Mr. Class-wide protest was the only one to get punished for it. Every quarter, the middle school gym class was forced to run a few miles for their physical exam. When the dreaded day arrived, we all decided to rebel and plotted with the history teacher. A few years ago, the gym teacher had kidnapped her entire class for a field trip to the pool, so she was thirsty for revenge. She took us to her classroom, locked us in there, and let us bunker down underneath the desks. For the entire period, the gym teacher was running all over the place. Through the windows, we could see him shuffling around in confusion, and he even went on the PAR system to order us out. But nope, we sat there until the bell rang and hid from him for the rest of the day. But we had to run an extra mile anyway. It wasn't a school story, it was an army story. I was in basic training at Fort Jackson over the 4 months. It was October 31st, and we were just a couple weeks from graduation. Every night we are supposed to line up in front of our beds with our toes touching a piece of white tape that runs down the length of the bay. It's called toe the line. They do a bed check and make sure everyone is there, then turn out the lights to go to bed. So that night a few of us got together and decided to wear our bed sheets during toe the line instead of our part uniforms. We called it Toga the Line. 2 dudes, Anderson and Bloglasnaff, were a couple of older guys in our platoon. Damn near 30 years old, both of them. They refused to go along. We explained to them that if we were all doing the wrong thing together, then no one would get in trouble. They still refused. So 28 of us lined up in togas and 2 guys lined up in the proper uniform. The drill sergeant comes in looking down at his clipboard and not paying attention to us and just starts calling out names. About 5 names in, he glances up, looks at all of us, and yells, "What the fuck is going on here?" The 2 guys not in togas get this smug look while shaking their heads at us. Then the DS turns and looks at those 2 guys and says, "I said what the fuck is going on here? Why aren't you 2 motherfuckers in uniform? Front leaning rest position go." They get down to do push-ups and the rest of us jump down with them. The DS says, "What the fuck are the rest of you doing in the front leaning rest position?" We yelled, "If they go down, we go down." I thought that DS was gonna cry for a moment. The only thing I miss about the army is the camaraderie. I had a math class in high school which was taught by the department chair, Mr. Smith. Now this guy was absolutely adamant about the no phones policy. Once while he was teaching he heard someone's phone vibrate and said that whoever's phone it was, they needed to bring it up and speak to him after class. When nobody moved, he said, "Okay, all of you have detention tomorrow morning." We complained to our parents that night. Parents complained to the school. School dropped us all from detention. The asshole teacher was still there for another year, but that's mostly because he was the varsity football coach. Back in high school, most of us had just started to drive to school. We had an assembly which no one was bothered to go to, so a lot of us who had brought cars to school decided to do a mass sneak out for an hour. How long the assembly was supposed to last? Turns out so many people were missing that they actually did a head count of who was there and who was not. Half the grade got detention, but it was worth it. At around 15 I discovered the greatest implement of mischief I could bring to school was a Phillips head screwdriver. After spending a productive morning taking the screws out of everything I could find, notice boards, toilet cubicles etc., I decided it was time to move up to dismantling the desks. There was one kid always the last into class, so I duly whipped out all the screws holding his desk together, leaving them hanging by just a hair, half a thread just enough to stop it collapsing under its own weight. Teacher's already there, in he comes, and crashes to the ground in a pile of metal and timber. Mass hilarity ensues. Happy with the outcome, and with the support of my peers I spent my lunch break doing all the desks in the room we'd be in for the next class. Teacher comes and sits down. I left her one alone. We all file in straight faced and all come crashing down. She seemed to not be too fazed by the Monty Python-like scene unfolding in front of her, people shouting indignantly, "This place is falling apart," etc. Gave us 15 minutes to sort this mess out, and having checked her own chair for structural rigidity carried on with the class, but kept us back 15 minutes to make up for lost time. Normal reporting time was 7+, but on every Thursday, there would be a free block/study block for the first 2 hours of school. This was the case for everyone. The school policy was that on Thursday, you just had to mark your attendance by 9+, which was done by scanning a card. Then the loco discipline mistress quietly changed that rule on some semi-hidden corner of the permanently glitchy school website, with no announcements made to the school. Now the secret rule was that you had to show up by 7+ on Thursdays, like any other day. Anyway, that Thursday came and like half the school ended up 2 hours late. That's more than 200 people. Everyone was thinking, well, this can't mean jack shit. What are they gonna do? Send all 200+ of us to detention? Logistically, they couldn't, so they did something way crazier. They gave half the school a mark on the permanent record. For context, you usually have to be late a few times to get a warning, and then late a few more times to get detention, and then get detention a few times to get a permanent mark. That day, this discipline mistress decided nope, half the school will get a permanent mark, even if it's their first offense. 8th grade in a public school, most teachers legit didn't give a shit. One of the rules said there would be no public nuisances. My idea, our goodbye to the school, would be interrupt the school Friday mass. I was up to read, and we got the class into all church jobs. And the Lord said to John, "Mama, we all go to hell." The speakers turned up, a couple boom boxes. We got yelled at, but it was so worth it.